Welcome to another wonderful episode of Santa Barbara Arts TV. Today, we are joined by Casey Suchan and Tim Cawley, the co-directors of the phenomenal documentary film Makeshift, Advertising Meets Technology, Everything Clicks. Casey, Tim, welcome to Santa Barbara Arts TV. A round of applause. Congratulations on an incredible documentary. First question, Casey, Tim, how are we feeling after this incredible film? Casey, go ahead.
Oh, wow. Well, this is the best part of making a film, right? Because as you're making the film, you're talking to people. It's fascinating. You're talking to your co-director and the other collaborators. Film is a very collaborative process, so we have to give kudos to our amazing editor, Matt Prekop, and our awesome producers, of which there were many. We were very lucky. And you're kind of working though in this little bubble and making the best film you can, and you're testing it out with audiences here and there. But this is the moment where you release your film to an audience, right? This is the moment that matters, because you don't make a film to talk to yourself. It would be like talking to yourself in the mirror, which for me is very boring. I don't know about you guys. Tim's more interesting than me. He might have great conversations with himself. But this is it, right? Like, this is why you make a movie. You make a movie to tell a story, and you hope that it's going to provoke thought and conversation. So it feels good.
Incredible. Tim, how are you feeling after wrapping up in a phenomenal documentary film? How does it feel?
It's the same thing, but more nerve jangling for me. Casey's done this ride. She has a longer filmography than me. I've done many ads, but most people aren't expected to like ads. They're more for the clients. And it's such an insular process making a film, and a million decisions get made, and you develop your own rules, and you go, well, we do it this way because this person likes this. And we had a client involved, which is not always the case. And then you release it and you go, oh my goodness gracious, we made this by our rules. But do society viewers who don't understand the pressures and objectives, will they receive it just as a piece of entertainment?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been the most thrilling part of the last week and a half, as we've started to talk to people outside the membrane. People going, wow, this was compelling. This is a world I'd never seen before, where we take all that for granted because we've been staring at it through, what was there, 42 cuts, Casey?
I think a few more than 42.
Yeah. So you can get, Armando, you can get a sense of like, the forest for the trees. I don't know if that's the right saying, but seeing people step back and go, oh, that's cool, that works.
Yeah, incredible. And taking a step back, Casey and Tim, let us talk about the inception of the film, the conception. How did this come about? I know, Tim, and we can talk a little bit about your backgrounds as well, coupled with how did the idea for Makeshift come about? What really inspired Makeshift? If you can touch on that a little bit, Casey and Tim.
It's a three-step thing. I have worked in advertising my whole career, and in advertising, you get to work with some really legit filmmakers, Oscar-winning DPs and directors who've worked with the top talent in the world. But as an advertising person, you boss them around. That's your job. And Casey, do you know Claudio Miranda?
No.
He's like shot with Fincher and stuff.
Okay.
And I was on set giving him direction. And I'm like, Tim, who are you? Who are you? And I went, and not that this puts me on any sort of level with him, but I went and I'm like, I got to shut up. I got to go make a film to at least try to validate my opinions. So I kind of know what I'm doing. So I made this documentary about creativity, and we played it. I sold it, played all over the world, but I did this outside my ad life. Fast forward 10 years. 8 to 10 years, I have this client, I run my own company now, and I have this client, WP Engine, and they see this change happening in advertising, and they are seeing it from the client side. And they go, we want to keep making ads with you, but we want to do something that isn't us pushing our opinion on the world. It's us saluting the digital world, where people legitimately want to watch it and are drawn to it, not because we're trapping them with media, but because it on its own merits. Do you think we could ever do a movie? And they're like, Tim's made a movie. Let's talk to Tim. And I had made this one movie, and it was about creativity, not strictly digital. And I was like, I think I can do that. And I love that idea, but I can't do it on my own. And I had crossed paths with an amazing company called September Club,
Mm.
and one of the top purveyors in the world of documentary production, editorial. And they had a director who I knew her films, but did not know she was part of September Club at that time. A woman who had made a movie called Rock the Bells, which was one of the great music documentaries, scary as hell. And they were like, what if you worked with Casey? And I said, ooh, that would be good. And she took the helm. She was the outsider, curious about this new world. I was the insider who knew some of the background. When we walk into a building, Casey would be like, I wonder what these people are like. And I'm like, well, I read in Adweek, they're a little bit like this. So it was kind of, she had the wide-eyed optimism and truth-seeking. And I had a little bit of, like, I could ask the next level questions about execution and process.
Mhm.
And the client rode the ride. Normally the client likes to, not WP Engine as a client, who ended up being our producers. But, you know, clients want to say what they want to say about their product. But this one, we're walking into this space where people are talking about the good parts and the bad parts. And it takes a real visionary client to ride that ride for what 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years. And, you know, at the end, we made a film that, I mean, Armando, did it feel at all like to have was any of our marketing stuff showing? They tried really hard to just make it like a love letter to digital creativity. WP Engine hosts, for lack of a better word, the simplest way to describe it, hosts giant websites.
Yes.
So designers and developers, they wanted to say, the internet is your playground. Advertising went through a hard time figuring it out, but these people in this film created the coolest stuff on the internet.
Mhm.
And we salute those kinds of people. And they said, as long as we do that with an open heart, you guys have creative leeway.
Yeah, it was an awesome collaboration. And WP Engine, what was so interesting about working with them is that they really wanted to make something useful too for their core audience. You know, so whenever you're making a film, you think about your core audience, the people that you know are gonna want to watch it because they work in that industry. Maybe you're making a movie about activists, they're activists themselves, you know, they care about the subject you're making the movie about for whatever reason. And they were very focused on, let's make sure we make something that's going to be useful to the people that we're trying to deliver a service to and start conversations with and celebrate them.
Mhm.
And Tim and I wanted to do that, and also make sure that the movie was interesting and compelling to the uninitiated audience. And WP Engine wanted that as well. So we were all kind of tracking these different priorities, you know, that really fused well together, and hopefully make the movie an experience that both people who know a little bit about the advertising industry, know a lot about the advertising industry, and know nothing at all about it, will get something out of.
And that's what I was going to mention. It's just a fascinating inside look into the world of advertising from a historical perspective. Let's talk briefly about the talent, because I was extremely impressed with the caliber of interviews and talent you presented. How did you go about approaching these extremely high level? These are CEOs, these are co-founders. How did you go about, I know maybe Tim, you have some experience with them, but what was it like approaching them and then working with them in this documentary film? Because it's just amazing, the talent that you're able to feature and present, and it's just amazing.
Well, I started with a wish list.
Mm.
I'm like in the middle part, I'll say the middle part of my career. So I came up admiring some of these people, but also there's some newer companies. So I'm like smack dab in the middle of the cast as far as where in the timeline. I started before the internet, and I've embraced the internet. But it was funny because I made my master list, which probably had some more like OGs who like are from the old school who survived the change. And WP Engine pushed for the newer guard who were more towards the tail end, like Hello Monday, Active Theory, Media Monks, who I was not as familiar with, but who were a great addition. And then, but you know, when you're doing a film like this, so I bring in September Club, and their credits or credentials are inarguable. Sundance, Toronto, on and on and on. Netflix. that brings credibility. But still, the first question you reach out to these people is, that sounds great. Who else is in it? So in the beginning, it's like, it's the chicken egg.
Yeah.
Well, no one else is in it, but you got to be in it. Well, it's like, as soon as you get somebody else cool to be in it, I'll be in it. So the first heavy person to say yes is Alex Bogusky, who's a little bit of like an, advertising outlaw guy. I mean, they all are in some ways, but he's really beats to his own drum. And he's like, yeah, it's cool. I'll be in that. And then as soon as we got him, his agency competes with some of these other big agencies. And then I think there was a little bit of like, well, if CPB is in it with Alex, we should probably, what if this ends up being the definitive digital advertising movie and we're not in it? And then once we got Alex, then we got 2 or 3 other people. And then once we got like 3 big names, that it started to happen quickly.
Yeah. And we were also approaching people knowing what campaigns we wanted to talk to them about, because the film tracks the kind of an overview of what happened in the advertising industry with, the digital revolution, if you will, and how that changed the conversation and created what Tim often refers to as this existential crisis within the industry. And, as we were doing our research, and Tim had amazing knowledge about all this because he lived and worked, during all these moments, was which campaigns like kind of really understood what was going on in the digital world and took advantage of it and learned how to speak to, the consumer in a different way or do something new and interesting for their client. So as we were approaching people, it was a little bit like, come and talk about how awesome you are. That's kind of hard to say no to, So I think that helps.
And thank you, Casey, for giving that brief synopsis of the film. The one thing I was very curious about was the subservient bunny. Did you always know that was going to be a key feature of the film, or did it just come about as a result of a consensus? Could you talk a little bit about that, and not to give too much away, or explain a little bit about the subservient bunny and how that
chicken.
Yeah.
Subservient chicken.
Subservient chicken. Excuse me. Thank you, Tim and Casey.
So that was the moment. I mean, I remember I was 12, 15 years into my career. I remember exactly where I was sitting when I saw that. And I'm like, oh my God, what if you made an advertisement people actually were like into? Like I'm 15 years and probably $20 million worth of production in my career. And I was like, it was, holy cow. What if somebody actually wanted to see what you made? It was inconceivable. And then that was the one. That was the one that changed. That was Alex Bogusky, who we mentioned before, and his agency, Crispin Porter, at the time. And they're one of like at that time, they were that. They were like, oh, what if the internet was actually like a cool thing for advertising and not like something that's going to ruin it? They just said, we can't fight it. We're going to join it and we're going to dominate it. Wow. And they got so big by embracing it. Casey, I think you were there with me when Alex told me, he said at the peak of our powers, there was like only 5 clients on the planet that could have made us a bigger, better agency. Wow. He's like, there wasn't anybody who could pay us more money or be bigger or do more production than the people we already had on our roster.
Wow.
And it was interesting interviewing people.
Because they did a chicken.
And Tim knew about this campaign and was absolutely like, we have to cover this campaign. This was the moment, But as you interview people, you don't lead them and ask them, what did you think of Subservient Chicken? You just kind of say, well, I think the question we always ask was, when did you first notice that advertising was going to like make a really interesting play for the digital space? Like, what was that first digital moment that you remember? Hands across the board, Subservient Chicken. In fact, I can't remember if it's in the movie, but at one point in one of our many, many edits, there was like the montage, Subservient Chicken, Subservient Chicken, Subservient Chicken. It was just, and it was kind of like, no matter in the age range that we talked to too, everybody kind of had a familiarity with that, because even some of the younger people in the film were just surfing around. They would have been surfing around the internet as teenagers, and they stumbled across it. So everybody kind of, it's endemic in the lexicon, I guess. And we knew right then this is going to be, I mean, that was the breakthrough moment of for the internet. You know, it was banner ads, then Subservient Chicken happened, and then a whole new landscape opened up.
I was so intrigued. I myself Googled it right away, seeing if the set was still up. It's just an incredible Subservient Chicken. Thank you for that. What were you surprised to learn about? Was there something that was revealing that you didn't expect to learn in making this documentary? Was there something that really maybe caught you off guard, or you were surprised to become aware of since making this documentary? Tim or Casey?
Casey, why don't you go first?
Yeah, for me, like the interesting like conversation was this realization that advertisers, creatives who really understood this digital space understood that what had changed was that an advertisement or relationship between a brand and a consumer became that. It became a two-way conversation. It became a real relationship where the consumers, the power shifted, right? Because with this two-way conversation, suddenly the consumer could destroy a brand, you know, with a review or they could talk back at them. So thinking about that and what that means for how that changes how brands are going to have to really think about their product differently and deliver differently and deliver as deliver on who they are as a company differently, because the audience matters. To me, was a really interesting conversation we were having. And as that continues to evolve, you know, the idea that a lot of the kind of people that are in these more digital agencies that are creating like apps and things like that for clients, the thing that's really at top of mind for them is how are we creating something that's useful and going to enhance somebody's life, and they're making a product which is an ad. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, that is such an interesting conversation, that if these advertisements, these things that are making us aware of brands, it's not even real advertisements anymore, right? It's just like building brand awareness. If they can be delivering things to us that are useful to us, I think that's super interesting. And that's kind of exciting looking forward, you know? Does that make sense? That I found interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, Tim, were you surprised, or was there anything revealing from making the documentary? Or
I knew the ad stuff. Not that I know all there is to know, but I knew the state of the industry. But the part is, like, I'm a business owner, an agency owner, and I had been at large agencies for many years, but now I run my own. And when you walk into some of these companies, it was good to be with Casey because I'm a fanboy of some. I made the list. Like, I walk into 72 and some of the guys are like my advertising heroes, or Droga or Boguski, or, you know, these kinds of companies I'm not only familiar with, I admire. So you walk in there and everybody, a lot of the agencies are competitive with each other. They've won and lost pitches against each other. Nobody does it the same way. I'm not going to name names, but in some of the interviews, we'd be like, oh, we talked to so-and-so and they said this. And it was like, that guy doesn't know blank, you know, like totally dismissive of other people who've made hundreds of millions of dollars. That person does. But what I noticed from the business owner standpoint was the glue was embrace the chaos. Like, because it's like a fighter complaining, why is everybody punching me in the face all the time? Like, you signed up to be in the boxing match, you are going to get punched. So I think all of these owners, even though they do totally make apps, make films, make branded content, make websites, whatever they do, make AR experiences, they all go, this business is not going to be what it is today in 3 years. It's going to be completely different in 10 years. And my skill set isn't making apps or making films. My core competency is creative problem solving in the face of chaos. And that's the box you got to check if you're going to endure to any extent.
It's just an incredible, insightful documentary. I was personally, as a viewer, I was very impressed by the blockchain cryptocurrency advertising from Ameritrade. Not to give any spoilers away or any sort of giveaways here, but I was just shocked. Could you share a little bit of, Tim and Casey, about what you hope the viewer takes away from it, or is there a message that you're trying to, obviously they'll watch it and they'll take a message, but is there something that you hope the viewer leaves the film feeling or saying or thinking?
Well, I think there's the collision of pop culture. It's like, oh, Burger King, or, you know, I have an account with Ameritrade, and there's all this creativity behind the brand. But really, I think for me, it's like that creative toughness.
Mhm.
Whether you're a salesperson trying to think how to put together new sales materials, you're going to plant a garden this weekend, and your cucumbers keep dying. I think there's like a creative fighting spirit that I'm hoping is broadly applicable. Like I watched a film about a classical composer not too long ago, and I'm not a fan of classical music in any way, but I could relate to so many things about like the being knocked down and the tenaciousness to make it a near impossible business. So you draw those broader conclusions. That's what I hope. And of course, I want to put the question back on you after Casey talks and see what you got out of it.
Well, I got a lot out of it, and yeah, Casey, go ahead. Is there as
Like, it's what the question is, what do we want the audience kind of takeaway to be, that kind of a thing?
Sure. Is there something that you hope to convey? I mean, from a historical standpoint, it's very historic. It's a wonderful insight into the history of advertising, gives a great timeline. And I don't want to give too much away for the viewers to see, but is there a message or something that you'd like the audience to leave away thinking about? Or
Yeah, well, I think one of the core themes of the film is that disruption. It can, you know, that when you can embrace disruption, that there can be a creative explosion, right? And that rather than resisting that kind of thing, that it can create opportunity and inspire the creative process, and like inspire what we can, just the playgrounds that we can exist in, you know, and in this case, it's in the advertising world. Like, how can we interact with brands? But I think like the theme is much broader than that. This idea of disruption and what can happen, you know.
And I mean, there's a meta thing happening here. You know, the last existential threat to advertising was we were all trained and built to make television commercials. And now people have DVRs and they watch things on the internet for 6 seconds at a time. How do we shift the business model, or how do we blow up the business model? Then the film comes, so that happens for 25, 30 years. People have embraced the new world. The advertising business has modified. There's new winners and losers. Boom, the film's literally coming out and COVID hits. The last thing I ever did in a crowded room in my life was attend the New York preview screening.
wow,
And we are ad agencies. We put together giant productions. We work in office towers downtown in cities, and no one's been to work. We come to work, but I'm special. But like, there are agencies around the corners that have abandoned their office towers and don't come to work anymore.
Wow.
Totally, like people getting laid off, clients going dark. How do we navigate this thing? And I hope that all of the chaos of what's going to happen, how we've survived this stuff before.
And that's
different circumstances, but creativity, technology, and that like take it on the chin and lean forward. That's what you do in advertising in all businesses.
And responsibility too, right? Like that's the film just kind of teases that conversation out, because it's a much bigger conversation than we had time to get into with this. But it's something that some of the people in the film do talk about, right? So it's all that, and also as we move forward, what's our responsibility in this case, you know, as people who, you know, talk to consumers on behalf of brands and help brands have that conversation. What's our responsibility here to the consumer, to their data and other things?
As a viewer, Tim and Casey, I'll tell you that I was extremely impressed, and this is why I highly recommend this film, because it brings so much more appreciation to how much creativity is involved, not only in making the advertising, but just now to adapt to all these changes that are nonstop changes. As Tim mentioned it, we've got now Netflix, Hulu, YouTube. it takes creativity to adapt into that medium now. So not only make an incredible ad, but also the creativity to adapt. It's just remarkable how much creative genius is in the advertising industry. So thank you for making that incredible film. Final question, Tim and Casey, where can we see it, and where is there going to be the premiere dates for the Santa Barbara Film Festival? You could just share that with us, and that'll be great.
We are out in 2 days, March 31st, April 1. It will be everywhere you can click play. VOD, Apple, YouTube, all of them. All the good ones, none of the lame ones.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I'm in advertising, so I will say anything at any time to further my cause.
Yeah.
I see that Santa Barbara International Film Festival logo. We have never screened at a festival. If there's any kind of special events they do for documentaries, put a bug in their ear. I want to see this in a room crowded with people at some point.
As soon as we can be in that room, I'd love to be in it again. Oh, I miss that.
It'll happen. Casey, Tim, thanks so much for joining us here at Santa Barbara Arts TV. It's been a real pleasure. Congratulations, and
Thank you.
just amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.